everybody, and welcome to day 40 of 50 Days Until I Am 50. As we go through this process, part of what I wanted to achieve in all of this is things that have come across that made me ponder on them. And I figured during these 50 days, because it was things that made me think, I wanted to share with you the same thing and wanted to know how you felt and maybe possibly how you dealt with this in the realm of things. So this might be something that you might consider getting. I carry what they call like a journal. I get a different one every year. This is actually how the whole thing with the Bar podcast got started. Is I had a journal. So every year I get a new one, and all I do actually, what I use it for is every time I think of something or some type of idea or something, I write it in here. So it's a bunch of all different stuff in it, but I always have it in my possession because then I can write things down and don't forget about them. So on this day 40, I want to specifically write this down because I want to make sure that I'm saying this correctly and that you hear it, because I want you to ponder on it as I discuss my take on it for this 50 days until I'm 50. It says on day 40, if we learn from our mistakes, why are we so afraid to make a mistake? And I thought about that because a lot of times when we ponder on the theory of mistakes, we don't intentionally set out to do them. It's what I believe. I'm sure everybody else will believe the same thing. You know, we make a mistake and it's not that we make it intentionally. So it's funny when you look at it and you say, with every mistake that you've made in your life, has it always been a lesson? And for the most part, no. Like, a lot of mistakes we make is not always a lesson. But the theory is that we learn something from the mistake. It's just, that's always what the theory is. So when I look at it and I think about my 50 years, and I say to myself, number one, I'm going into 2019 being very free to make mistakes because I want to learn. I want to learn, right? And you got to be bold enough to want to learn. But the thing about having a mental Rolodex of things that you've experienced in your life and the mistakes that you've made, you have the power to say, I'm no longer going to make those mistakes anymore. And that can come from anything. And like for me, my number one thing that I stick with when I think back on the theory of everything that I've been through, the number one mistake that I will never make again is I will never go into another marriage again, not making sure I, cross my T's and dot my I's. I will make sure that I do not make the same mistake twice. So in order to do that, that is the lesson learned. You take everything from that. And the same thing goes with any other aspect in your life. But it's interesting because we could say we learned something from a mistake, but we are petrified to make the mistake. Because in the end, in the process of it, we do not want to actually go through the learning curve of it. I mean, think about it. If you live by the theory, man, I'm going to learn something from this mistake I'm about to make, you don't want to learn it. Like, you really don't. Like, you don't want to go through that process. So you try this hard way of saying, I'm going to just avoid it. But mistakes can be a good thing in a lot of cases. You can make mistakes with money, and you can make mistakes with friends and situations, and you can make mistakes with relationships. But there should be something you learn from that process. When you make a mistake, honestly, mistakes are not meant to be repeated. This is why they're called mistakes, and they should just be that which they are. If you see yourself constantly making the same mistake over and over again, it is time for you to start reevaluating yourself. Because you should be able to do something, recognize, learn the lesson, and then say, okay, I am never going to do this again. Because what should be going on in your head is the physicality, the emotional, and everything that transpired from that mistake. Do you want to feel that pain again? I think this is why I become so so headstrong about ever getting into a marriage again. Because what goes in my mental Rolodex with the lesson that was learned was all the pain, all the emotion, all of that took place. And I say, well, I'll be damned if I'm going to go through that again. And I feel the same way about my health. I feel the same way about money. You know, it's like at 2019, I am just going to see the light at the end of the tunnel financially. And I said to myself, I will never go down that road again. So in order to do that, you learn from that mistake, or half of it really was not a mistake. Like most of it was not my fault. But regardless of what transpired in it, you now have the control to say, okay, if I don't want to go down that road again, then I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z to ensure. Now, if something happens in the process that's out of your control, it is not a mistake. It is just you become a victim of that which you are subjected to. But if you intentionally, every time you get a paycheck, and instead of paying a bill, you're doing X, Y, Z, you've now made a mistake on your money, it is nothing more than a lesson learned saying, okay, I ain't going to do this again because I don't want to feel the anxiety of what has just transpired. And that's really all it is. I mean, I think it is very healthy to go through life and make some mistakes. But those mistakes can also instill fear, because the lessons that you learn from all of these processes can block you from taking chances and doing different things and taking chances on people and relationships, because you sit back and you've made a mistake in the choices you've made. So therefore you choose to be single because you don't want to make the same mistake again and again. And it goes for men and women. You know, it's like, it's just safer just to be by myself, or it's safer to not do this and not do that. You know, one of the things that I saw, I hate to pull this in, but like, you know, I watched the Dr. Phil, and he talked about mistakes and stuff like that and not recognizing things. And this is so true what he said. You should always be in investigative mode. You know, whenever you're getting to know people or different things like that, you know, you should never, he said, long gone are the days when we give people and situations the benefit of the doubt. He was like, that's gone. Now it's just a matter of being in investigation mode and people proving to you who they are and their intentions. But you have the power to recover from any mistakes that you made. The way in which you make yourself bigger is that you recognize your mistake and keep it moving. It's when you sit in a corner, you make a mistake, and then you ponder on it month after month after month. What are you actually learning? Because a learned lesson is supposed to make you move further and never make the mistake again. So it's so funny when I saw this question, and it was like questions to ponder on, and it says, like, you know, if we know the positiveness of a mistake is the lesson learned, why are we so afraid to make a mistake? And it's funny, because we are only afraid to make mistakes on certain things. You know, it's like, because I talk to my friends and that word comes up, you know, especially friends that are single, you know, and they say, you know, I don't want to make the same mistake again. You know, I met this person and I don't want to make the same mistake again. And I met this person, you know, mistakes are going to be made. It's how we protect ourselves, our hearts, our minds, our bodies, our souls in the process, you know. But I like what he said. You always stay in investigative mode, you know, and try to make the lesson as minimal as possible. You're going to make mistakes. It is a given. But like I said in earlier videos, if you're faced with something, don't move into it with assumptions unless you have proof to what you're moving into. Make sure that if you know there's a possibility that you're going to make a mistake on something, make sure that before you make the move that could possibly be a mistake, make sure you've done everything investigative properly, so that if there is a chance it could be a mistake, at least you took the necessary precautions to move forward with some proof. and be confident in your choice. And then if it turns out to be a mistake, then you're like, okay, well, moving right along. I knew, it's a possibility that could have happened. And I think as we get older, even as men and women, as we move into our 40s and 50s and beyond, we do come complacent with ourselves. And despite the fact that we want companionship, despite the fact that we want to live in the realm of love and affection and so forth, we still don't want to make the mistake. Because like many people in my age group, many people that are 50 and above, believe that they don't have another opportunity to mess it up again. Your gap of learning becomes smaller and smaller because, if you're in your 50s and you start seeing someone and you give it time, effort, and all of this stuff, you really don't have the time to really give someone 5 years and it ends up being a mistake. Because after a while, as you move into your 50s and mid 50s, you actually become one that is starting to turn a little bit unattainable, right? Because now you're becoming too old. And it becomes, your pickings become slimmer and slimmer, or you have to go with someone much younger, and that sometimes can cause an issue too. So I get why a lot of my friends in situations say to themselves, yeah, I just don't want to make the same mistake again. So as we move into 2019 and we're in February, getting into February and so forth, and we look at what we're faced, and I say this on this day 40 or 50 days until I'm 50, you're going to make mistakes. It's inevitable. You're going to be also the victim of other people's mistakes. And sometimes it's not even going to be a lesson to be learned. It's just going to be a part of life. And the only thing that you can do is try to prepare yourself in your own personal realm of saying that at least the damage that may be done by a mistake that someone else made or something that I made, I can try to minimize it as much as possible. If you make a mistake, make the mistake, learn from it, and regroup and get yourself back on track. Don't get caught up in the mistake you made and waste time and ponder on that mistake where it just continuously takes you over. You deserve better than that. You're better than that. So it's just a part of life. And we get through it. And we always do. All right, everybody. On to day 41.